Hi, I'm Edward Mooney, Jr. My research is entitled Trauma, Teaching After Witnessing a School Shooting. But before I get into my research, let me tell you a little bit about my background. When I was a teenager, I had an abusive alcoholic father, which meant I was an at-risk student. There are many times I considered quitting school, but three teachers changed my mind and held on to me. I'd like to give credit to Wendell Ward, Lowell Schroeder, and Bill Snyder, my football coach, who later went on to coach at Kansas State University. Because I was an at-risk kid and I saw the power of what these three teachers did for me, I decided I wanted to follow in their footsteps and become a teacher. I was one for over 26 years. During that time, I went back and finished my doctorate. I hold a degree of Doctor of Education from Northeastern University in Boston. I've been a college professor for a little bit over 6 years. Now, how did I start this research? Well, the seeds of a dissertation started in an ethics class at Northeastern with Professor Jennifer Duffy. We had a case study in which we looked at ethics surrounding a school shooting. We were to look at it from the point of view of the student who was shot or the shooter. And I, for a very personal reason, went up to the professor and said, could I do the ethical situation of the teacher as my paper? She agreed as long as I did some research, and I found very little had been done to document that. So, how did I do the research? I came up with a very simple question. How does witnessing a school shooting affect a teacher? I talked to many educators who'd seen a school shooting. Very difficult to do, by the way. There are some very powerful emotions even years later. But I realized there were two outcomes to witnessing a school shooting. People were able to continue on with their career and retire normally. And then there were many people who would either leave the profession or be emotionally disabled because of what they witnessed. Then I started wondering why. Well, I narrowed it down to two teachers. They were both middle school teachers, and I found interesting that one of them was able to continue teaching. The other one ended up permanently disabled because of it. I used qualitative methodology using open-ended question narrative format. And I utilized the Johnny Saldana coding method to interpret the results. But before I start talking about my teachers and results, there's a quote that has stayed with me that I attribute to Dr. Suzanne Dillman, and it really has changed my view of trauma. And I quote her, "Traumatic experiences damage your sense of self in that experiencing trauma shatters the beliefs, morals, philosophies, ethics that give life meaning. The beliefs that once made sense, such as good things happen to good people and bad things happen to bad people, no longer fit with the real world experiences you just went through." Well, let's talk about Melissa's story. These are pseudonyms to protect my participants. She was a middle school teacher. She had just come back after pregnancy leave. She had a new baby. And she immediately noticed a lack of administrative support. Her classroom was a mess, lesson plans hadn't been followed, supplies were missing. She was at a lab with her students where they were writing on a computer, and she was talking to one student when she heard a very loud pop. Thinking it was a computer screen, she turned her head just in time to see the shooter pull the trigger a second time. It was a very bloody scene. Of course, trauma was horrific. Shock was horrific. She did everything she could. The shooter dropped the gun and left the room. Afterwards, she had to complete a lot of paperwork, of course, saw the police, and then she was given some time off. After a couple of weeks, and by the way, on her own, she saw a psychiatrist. She tried returning to work and found out it wouldn't happen. They put pressure on her, said you either have to come back to work or leave your position. She felt trapped. The psychiatrist tried talking to the district. There was very little flexibility on their part. She came back, and one day it got so overwhelming, and one of the reasons was the blood stain in the carpet was still there. It had been shampooed, but you can easily see it. The district had not changed the carpet, moved her classroom, or anything like that. just expected her to come right back to work. One day, she just picked her purse up, walked into the principal's office, and resigned. And that became a downward spiral. She got into a situation where she found it was very difficult to leave her house. Since then, she's received a lot of care and is able to have more functionality, but she still struggles. She is now disabled. Looking at my other participant, called him Mike, he was watching kids after school in the parking lot, parents picking them up. He noticed a man walking near him and it looked like he had a stick or something. All of a sudden, he heard a loud pop. That stick was a rifle. And he watched in horror as he saw students get hit. He immediately, one thing crossed his mind, get out there and just tackle the guy. And he did. And he ended up sitting on him until the police came. He was given immediate counseling, support, and leave. Various administrators visited him when he returned to the classroom, including the district psychologist. He was able to work until his plan for retirement without any major interruptions. I had to find out why. There was a hesitance on my part to publish this book from Peter Lang. I had written a number of articles for online news media and received quite a lot of negative pushback from people thinking things about my work that weren't true, like I'm out to take people's guns. This was more about the psychological aspect of school shootings. I didn't make any statements about weapons. I wasn't going to publish it until November 14th, 2019, when I got a call from my daughter. She was hysterical. My grandson, her son, Adam, was at Saugus High School when there was a shooting there. Of course, he was fine. I'm very grateful for that. But I realized at that point I needed to do something. I decided to publish the book, no, not thinking that I would change the world, but at least I could contribute one small brick to stopping this problem. So I began working with Peter Lang. We went through the entire peer review process. I didn't know how to convert a dissertation into a readable book. I'm hoping it worked out. And publication was April of 2021. Now, one of the other reasons I had hesitancy, and I haven't mentioned that throughout this discussion, is I was shot at early on in my teaching career. As I mentioned, I'd been a high school teacher. One day I was out eating lunch with some students, and somebody drove by with a pistol and started shooting at us. And I pushed and threw kids away and jumped behind a tree. No one was hurt, no problems except maybe a twisted ankle. But that was traumatic. I invite you to read my book, to read the stories of Mike and Melissa, and hear them, understand what they have gone through. Mine was just a single someone shot at me sort of thing. Today, with mass shootings, I'm very concerned about the well-being of teachers. I thank you, and if you would like to contact me, my email is edwardmooney@live.com, and my email address is edwardmooney.net. Here's hoping that my research won't be needed much longer. Take care, and thank you.